Welcome to another episode of the Speak for Yourself podcast. I'm Casey, your host, and I'm so glad that you are joining us. Tonight we have a returning guest and a new guest. Aidan, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging. I'm drinking coffee to get my spirits
Awesome.
up.
Yeah. You said you had a long night coming up.
Yeah, I got like 6 more hours of stuff I got to do.
And our new guest, we have Bree from the Fear Me It's Bree podcast.
Hi.
How are you doing, Bree?
A little clippy. I don't know why, but we'll survive, I guess.
As the resident cryptozoologist, I have some opinions on what kind of monster Bree might be.
I am the lizard person in that plane. It was, oh my gosh, that's weird. Oh well.
That person is not real. That's still my favorite video for a while.
No, you have no idea how many times I was tagged in that video.
I bet.
I was tagged. It was just constant. Every single platform, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, just constant me being tagged. And I'm like, guys, I have no idea what to tell you. This makes no sense to me.
It's odd that she hasn't, shown up back on social media to like defend herself or say anything about it.
That's honestly the weirdest part. That is
someone saying it's an actress, but like the actress they showed a picture of has too much fat in the face. Like it's not the same person. And
yeah, it didn't look like. I saw that too. It didn't look like the same person at all. I saw one that said that she was on her way to a cruise, and I guess that makes sense. Like if you're on the cruise, you're not going to be on social media, really.
Yeah, true.
Or she was just disappeared.
I don't know if you guys have ever been prescribed like Ativan or Xanax or anything, but if you are on that and you're also drinking, things can get a little weird up here. I would not be shocked because a lot of people have fear of flying, might like get a prescription for Valium for the flight, and then might have a couple of drinks as well, and then eventually you're on a plane, the dude next to you just kind of looks a little weird, and you're like, you're fake.
Well, listen, someone told me, or not told me, but I saw that someone said that he like blinked sideways, like horizontally. And I'm like, man, if someone did that to me on a plane, I might be a little shaken up too.
Yeah.
Yep. It's bizarre.
And then, of course, this guy I know who's a Freemason on TikTok, he makes a video where, of course, he's like, I was the guy in the hoodie. And I'm like, oh, God, no, I know this guy. And then, of course, it turns out he was just kidding. But like, he told it way too convincingly. And it was really like, as somebody who like, he's going to be on my shows like in a few weeks. Like, I was like, I could not tell.
Yeah, I can't wait to see her come back and tell her side or, defend herself, whatever.
Yeah,
but yeah, it kind of looked like she was...
I want her on whatever podcast. I want her on that one.
For sure.
I want to know her opinions on dating.
Not lizard
it's
men,
funny
apparently.
watching it's funny watching everyone simp for her while calling Margot Robbie mid. Very strange.
Yeah, that debate's entertaining.
We briefly had a debate along those lines on a Pop Culture Crisis back in June, where like me and Phil Labonte were arguing over just like some like objectively very attractive people and just netting out in completely different places. And
whenever I watch
really
that, Mary's like, no, they're not. Like, she seems like she's very harsh about it.
Mary's a character in person. I like her. She's a fun person. But no, like she
seems based.
Very a little too much for me.
Yeah.
But, no, everyone down there is great. But the whole like the internet going and calling Margot Robbie mid for no reason has just convinced me that we're past the point of the internet being an intelligent place or even having any hope of being that, because now it's just people saying whatever they can to get attention.
Yeah, that had to have been clickbait for sure.
There's no way somebody actually thinks she's not attractive.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about The Sound of Freedom. I think we've all seen it, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. When did y'all see it? I saw it on Monday night.
Wednesday for me.
It was like the Wednesday it came out. I think it was the 5th.
Okay.
Might have seen it Tuesday. It was the beginning of the week sometime.
Well, let's just with what your thoughts were on the movie before we get into anything else about it. Aidan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I thought as far as an actual film goes, it was good. Cinematography was good, writing was good, acting was good. It felt kind of like, a lower budget, but like a lower level studio, but not indie level production. And it was good. The story was compelling. You could tell there were a few places where they were probably embellishing or adding in events, streamlining things so that it made more sense. But it, in my opinion, it was a pretty solid, like 7 to 8 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. My only like critique of it for just how the movie flowed was there were 2 scenes in particular where they would linger on something to kind of give you the gravity of it, like when the guy closed the curtains. And then one other part I don't remember that they lingered so long, I kind of was like, did it freeze? Should I tell somebody? And then the movie continued and I was like, oh, okay. So that was kind of weird. But other than those 2 little things, I thought it was great. So
yeah, I really enjoyed it. I kind of describe it, if you haven't seen it, I kind of describe it as a mix between Taken and like Narcos type of stuff.
It's like a very tame Sicario.
Yeah.
I liked that one.
And one of the things that was interesting to me was I prepared myself like mentally for the load of watching this movie for about a week before I went and saw it. And then when I saw it, the parts that I had mentally prepared myself for weren't as bad as I thought they were going to be, which is, a good thing, because I thought it was going to be so much worse than it was. But they did a very good job at conveying what was going on without showing you too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was concerned about how that was going to be handled, and I think that the way that they implied everything was just right. Like they showed you just enough to make you like understand without going too far.
Yeah,
for sure.
One of the worst scenes to me was pretty much the opening sequence. And I'm not going to spoil it for anyone, but it
the whole time what's going on.
You know what's about to happen and you can't stop it, and you're like trying to reach out to the dad in the situation and tell him, like,
in your
stop,
head you're
no,
like, please don't do it, just don't, like.
So that was one of the worst scenes for me, and that definitely that unlocked a new fear. Like, no, I don't want to blow that either, but I'm like, no, not ever gonna do that. I don't care.
Don't care how legit you seem, like.
And for me, I mean, I spend a lot of time looking into really awful stuff that's happened to people, and
I do too. I don't know why.
I was expecting it to be like, heavy, but to handle it, and it was. I was having a hard time. Like, and this is none of this stuff is all that particularly new to me. Just like the gravity of seeing it play out, and I think that that's the disconnect a lot of people are having too with the backlash to the movie, is that the people who have seen it are like, the emotions it makes you feel about this issue are very important. And then there's people on the other side who are like, the movie is inaccurate, and certain experts have said that Tim Ballard's methods are harmful. And it's like, I think a lot of the people on that side are not getting that the people on the go see the movie side are more about you need to understand how huge an issue this is, and you need to feel those emotions regardless of how real it is, because no matter how much the movie embellished, those emotions are going to be important, and they're going to make you understand and care. And I think that's what people want. And another side of the spectrum is more concerned with, like, calling it QAnon propaganda for some reason.
Yeah, so let's get into that a little bit. The main reason for this discussion is because so many leftist news outlets have been running a smear campaign against this movie for seemingly no reason, or for nefarious reasons. I'm gonna pull up a couple. I had these pulled up on the computer, and then I had to restart because of my camera. So I lost those, but I'm going to pull them up and I'll just read out the headlines. All right. So from Jezebel, the
My
headline
favorite one.
reads,
Oh,
Sound of
boy.
Freedom is an anti-child trafficking fantasy fit for QAnon. Rolling Stone, review, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon teen thriller about child trafficking, is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. The Washington Post, Sound of Freedom, the low-budget film about child sex trafficking, almost topped the box office on July 4th, but its star, Jim Caviezel, has linked to the QAnon movement. The Guardian, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon-adjacent thriller seducing America. Let's see.
It does not matter. I have a very viral TikTok about this film. It has 1.3 or 1.4 million views. I have so many comments that are, this movie is a QAnon, it's all about QAnon stuff. Not a single person, when I have asked what is the QAnon propaganda in the movie, has been able to tell me. Not one person.
Of course,
even just
it's all
regular
NPCs
conservatives, like they don't know what it is. If I ask any conservative I know, do you guys believe in QAnon? They're like, what's that? Like nobody knows.
It's like what it's like a weird fringe group of people who are overly loud on Twitter, and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, so one of my good buddies called me on Friday, and I think he had seen it Thursday night, and he had seen all of this propaganda and smear campaign stuff before he went. And so when he went, he was looking for, trying to pick up on what it could be that they're referring to as far as QAnon and stuff like that. And, when he called me on Friday, he was like, I didn't see anything. I was expecting them in the movie to maybe link it to the president's involved, or, the 3-letter agencies, or, yada, 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 that sort of stuff. But there's nothing like that in the movie. It's pure rescue mission stuff,
Yeah, it really it's such a tame movie. Like I genuinely, I can't for the life of me understand where the connection is, because
maybe
I think there's a lot of people
stuff,
but like there are creepy billionaires. Like that I think the part that really bugged me was I saw a whole bunch of people that were like, oh well, that the whole like pedophile island thing wasn't real, and I was like, did we all forget about Jeffrey Epstein already? Like, why is it so hard for you to believe that there's a pedophile island?
And not just one.
Emperor Tiberius had one 2,000 years ago. Why do you think it wouldn't happen today? Like, so that part, the fact that nobody believed that, I think somebody told me that, oh well, it's because they have the scene with the vaccines that have a GPS in them.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, that's an actual thing. Like, people sometimes inject GPSs.
Yeah.
Yep.
It happens.
That didn't faze me at all, because that's like,
no. I was like, yeah, okay.
A real thing. I mean, they inject dogs with chips all the time, so you can find them.
Yeah, it's like,
so that if they go to the pound, they'll know who they are.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
My thing with the Jezebel article is the way it begins it, where it says anti-child trafficking, because whenever you say anti something, it's usually in a negative connotation to make your point, to be like, if I was pro-choice, I'd be like, anti-abortion activists do this thing. So saying anti-child trafficking activists, it's like, wait, that's bad to be that? That's blows my mind. That just the title of the article. Forget what's in it for a minute.
Yeah, like I would be proud to be called anti-trafficking. That would
right?
be a good thing.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think I said this earlier. I'm not going to find the tweet or anything, but being anti-child sex trafficking should be the easiest thing for people to come together and not be bipartisan on. Yeah, you would think. But it's not been that way, which is just astounding.
Found the guy that wrote the article I was digging through some of his articles, the Jezebel one, he had one about a movie that was about cannibals, and he was writing things like, we should really not stigmatize cannibalism in movies. We should really embrace it. It's kind of like a allegory for being queer, and like wrote all kinds of other weird stuff. So I was like, yeah, these are the kind of people that are writing these articles. I'm not surprised anymore that they're not anti-child trafficking. So
I feel like
it's a little weird.
if I were gay, I probably wouldn't want that compared to cannibalism.
Yeah, you think that would be offensive.
But
Yep, but it's not.
So why do you guys think that there is this smear campaign going on? Do you think that it's for the movie and the content of that, or do you think they're against Jim Caviezel? What do you think?
I think there's two things going on at the same time. I think there's a legitimate reaction from actual trafficking experts who are like, okay, there are these problems with what not Caviezel, what Ballard does. And some of those problems, like, oh, well, some of the kids that he rescued immediately ended up back into the trafficking thing. I'm like, that's not his fault. That's the police not being able to stop this. He rescued them. It's not his responsibility to make sure they don't fall back in, because we can't expect that much of one person's organization. That's just too much. But so I think there's a lot of people who are like in the weeds on that, the specifics of how he does things and whether or not it's the best possible way to do it or a rather harmful way to do it. And then I think there's also a certain class of people who are against it because they don't want people thinking about this. Because this is partially because, think about one thing, if everybody in the country can get behind one issue, it's probably this, and that breaks the divide and conquer strategy entirely. So you can no longer divide people based on stupid little things, because they're going to be like, well, no, we actually have something to focus on now, like we did after 9/11. They totally used that to get national unity to go into Iraq. It could be the same thing now. We could get national unity behind something, and that's not what the people in charge want, because then they can't pull strings and they can't trade deals back and forth. So I think there's two classes, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole and say, oh, there's also the pedophiles trying to stop this. But I think there's like a legitimate organized effort by people in power to avoid unifying issues like this through the media.
It's a great point. Yeah.
I think there's two options, in the sense of, I said to my husband, I was like, do you think that this is really people being so evil that they're going to fight against this? Or do you think they're so naive and brainwashed that if the right likes something, they feel like they have to diss it immediately? And then they come back around and go, oh, wait, hang on. Maybe we shouldn't have played so hard into that one. But I'm coming to the conclusion where I'm like, nah, I guess it's just evil people doing evil things. But at the same time, I think having Caviezel involved, where he's like super Catholic, right? So he's kind of a hard figure. He played Jesus. They don't like him very much. So he's another red flag to them. So yeah.
Yeah, he's also been on like Steve Bannon's War Room and stuff like that. Doing interviews and going a little bit more in depth of how he thinks 3-letter agencies are involved in like
kind of like how Russell Brand's kind of not really a hot topic for them right now either. Like they hate Russell Brand right now because he's been doing similar stuff.
I do think it's a little weird to be like, oh no, there's no way the CIA has ever been involved in child trafficking. I'm like, I would say there's actually, knowing literally nothing about anything that has anything to do with this, just based on the CIA's track record, I feel like they'd go out of their way to do child trafficking just to try it out. Like, just
they were responsible for bringing cocaine into the inner cities in the 80s.
Also,
and then causing that whole epidemic.
Just another Monday for them.
Think how good that would be for them to have on a foreign leader. Like, that they set it up, they traffic somebody to him, and then they have the dirt. Like, we know that this has happened before. So to say the CIA could never possibly do it is ridiculous. As my buddy Wendigoon says, if you think the government wouldn't do that, oh yes, they would.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
So I know that Bree has listened to that Timcast episode with Tom Ballard on it. Have you heard that, Aidan?
I have not yet.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. He goes through and he talks about some of the differences in the movie and what he actually did, and then what was completely accurate, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's going to be all next week for me, is just going through all of that stuff.
Yeah, but some of the stuff that he said about the differences was interesting, because the story that he told, at least to me, made me more emotional than the same part in the movie. Because there are little differences. And I was like, man, they should have wrote it the way that it actually happened, because it was
Well, there's one thing
Very
that he'd
emotional.
mentioned that they aged the kid up for the movie, but in real life he was only 5, and that was like a gut punch for me because that was close to my son's age. So I was like, as a parent, you kind of picture your own child. So for me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's really hard to hear.
Yeah.
That was something that got me.
That's another critique of the movie that's bothered me is people who are like, oh, well, he didn't actually do all these things this way. And again, I have not got to that point yet in the research that I'm doing, but it's a movie.
Yep.
It's got to keep people entertained if they're going to stay and watch it. Otherwise, it's a documentary that you got to do, and then only people who want to see documentaries are going to see it. No, they wanted to make an impact, so they told a riveting story.
Yep.
They were going to have to make changes, and I think that raking them over the coals for that, when there's been a lot of movies about left-wing figures that are really, really, really overly generous, I think it's just kind of stupid.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say whenever you were talking about the people that were criticizing Tim Ballard's methods, I would like to see their rescues versus his rescues, because I feel like he would at least be comparable, if not, have more.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I keep going back to the Jezebel article because I read it before seeing the movie because I wanted to. And that's something that the author criticized, where he was like, and then they did this, and then they just threw them into the back of a van. How's that any different than what a trafficker would do? And I know movies aren't always accurate, but has he not seen a movie where there's a sting operation and it's like, go, 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 life or death, get in the van, run? Like, has he not watched anything like that? Because that's kind of how it goes in movies, at least. So, I don't know.
That's a terrible take.
Yeah, it was
not
so
yours,
dumb.
but the Jezebel one.
Also, like when I'm watching the movie, I wasn't sitting there going, "Yeah, I bet he really did kill that warlord." I'm like,
"Yeah,
this might have happened, but I strongly doubt this part happened." Like, and it didn't take me out of it because I was like, that was needed for the story to keep
the
movie
gravity
moving along.
too of the situation."
Yeah, like it was, that's sensible.
And then they were like,
imagine being
him.
in that one situation, just that the camp situation.
Yeah.
Just mind-boggling. I don't know.
My thing would be even seeing all the other people that are suffering, like not just going full out Punisher and just being like, all right, we're done. You're all going down, and just focusing on that one person. Because that was rough to watch.
Yeah, that was it. The whole thing was difficult.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting being in an action movie of sorts and there being next to no, like gun violence or stuff like that. I hate to call it gun violence, but like, he's not out carrying guns and like blasting dudes because he can't, because it's it's like a reconnaissance mission,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had to make up for the lack of, big gunfights with some embellishments on other stuff.
Well, I think too, another thing, they can't make movies anymore where they put pedophiles in bad lights. Did either of you watch The Punisher like all the way through?
No.
I've seen the movies. I have not seen the show.
In the show, there's a part where there's a guy that's in the army who's like into fetish stuff, and like the army general that has the dog mask. It's basically that, and he goes in and he beats him up for it, and he beats the snot out of him for it. And I was just thinking about that because I was like, like we're making a movie that's not glorifying pedophiles. They couldn't make anything like that anymore. So of course, even this, where it's more mild and tame, they can't say anything nice about it.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but after seeing that movie, my first inclination was to quit my job and like go Rambo, Hulk out, and go try to save kids, that sort of thing.
it made me very serious about my job, just because this is already so much of what I do, and just like made me, very first thing I did was I dropped $500 to buy tickets for people.
Nice.
Like sitting in the theater, I was like,
Speaking
I'm doing
of that,
this.
Did that work? Because my husband and I were like, most theaters shut off Wi-Fi. Like, does this actually work for people to scan it?
Yeah, it works for me over cellular data. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, our theater, it's like once you go in, your phone's done. So.
Oh no, not for mine. Yeah, it worked. That just might have been your theater, but yeah. So that was the first thing I did. Second thing I did was I called my co-host, my business partner, and I was like, "Hey, we need to figure out a way to organize some sort of like charity or website, something we can do to compile cases and things like that that's easily accessible to the public." And then we were like, and who else can we get involved on this? Like, who else do we know in the content creator sphere who has a large platform? So it really lit a fire under our asses.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, like any more these days, you just can't do that. And that's why it's so much more important to support the people that are already in it, because I can't just quit my job and go do that and be successful at it. Like, you have to have the proper training, you have to have the proper funding, you have to be bilingual, if not, like trilingual.
Yeah.
Also, that kind of
you
running
have
around
to
in the
have
woods is
intelligence.
that kind of running around in the woods that they're doing is no joke.
Yeah. Physical fitness, like rucking or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, like I
crazy.
said, that's why it's important to support the people that are already set up to do this, So at the end of the show, I have a couple of websites that I'll shout out that are Tim Ballard's. But anyway,
Nice.
Aidan, you had a TikTok, and this might have been the one that you said went viral, but you were talking about Disney and everything that happened with that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so what happened with this movie was that it was finished in 2018 and slated for release in 2019, I believe, under Fox. Disney merges with Fox, acquires all of Fox's properties, decides to shelve the movie. It was ready. It was going to be released. That was planned. Disney claims that there were petitions against the movie's release and that it was just, oh, well, it's just not our kind of movie that we don't want to put out. The sources are dubious. It's, it's too religious, blah, 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 like every excuse under the sun for not putting out a movie that when you actually watch it content wise, there is nothing political. There is nothing religious. It is child sex trafficking is a thing. We need to do something about it. And some of the responses I've seen are like, oh, well, it's not actually 1 to 2 million kids per year. And I'm like, how are you missing the point this badly? Like, why are you so obsessed with poking little holes in minute details rather than going and looking at the bigger picture of, oh, we can all come together to fight something that is horrible that is happening to kids all over the planet. Oh, well, most of it's not actually sex trafficking, it's child labor. It's like, I don't care. Let's stop that too.
Either way, yeah.
Yeah, like if this movie jumpstarts a movement to care about it and to actually do something to solve it, I think that we can forgive whatever other sins there are.
Yeah. Did I hear correctly that Netflix turned it down too? I thought I heard something about that.
I believe Netflix
and Amazon.
Yep.
Wow. Honestly, it's probably a good thing because they wouldn't have had the platform they have, like having theater releases. But at the same time, that says a lot about Netflix and that says a lot about Amazon because it would have come out. Huh?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, wouldn't it have come out the same year as Cuties, probably, if Netflix had put it out?
And that was the other thing is all the same journalists that wrote stuff praising Cuties were calling this propaganda and QAnon. I'm like, you would call it QAnon propaganda and hope people
Which one was it that called Cuties? They were like, it's about a teenage awakening as their like QAnon conspiracy for brainworm addled men or something like that.
That was Rolling Stone or The Guardian.
Yep.
It makes me think of that Michael Malice quote where he says that the corporate media is the enemy of the people or something to that extent.
And the other one's no matter how much you hate journalists, you don't hate them enough.
Yeah. Literally.
Which is just ringing true more and more every day.
Yeah.
One of my favorite journalist stories that I can tell really quick though is that I was very closely involved in the Gabby Petito case.
Oh wow.
I was the first one to report on the story, and I talked to her mother for 6 hours on the phone, getting the full story so we could put out a video on it, correcting the entire record, giving all of the facts, going over we went over the autopsy report on Brian, that whole thing. And we went very deeply into it. So that's like, this is something that I've been deeply involved with in the past. And I just, the level of scrutiny that is on this case, this movie, when you look at cases around the world in recent times, of just horrific things happening and wealthy people covering it up, private islands like Epstein. Because I fully believe that, maybe I'm going to catch a slander charge for this, but that Brian Laundrie's parents, paid off media and lawyers and local officials to get them to cover things up. So that happens, and they're not even all that rich. So you want to tell me that billionaires can't be doing this? That state government officials can't be doing this? That there's nothing of this sort going on? And you're going to tell me that all of this is stuff I shouldn't know about, and then you're going to go and write an article telling me that watching like 9-year-old girls twerk is a good thing?
Right. Yep.
Well, just to continue on that thread, we still don't have the list. The Epstein client list, which is,
and we never will.
What are we doing?
Yep.
It would be great if it would be great if this movie lit a fire under people's asses, and that was the final straw.
I totally got off my train of thought. What I wanted to say though was when I was talking to Gabby's mom, I just got carried away on I hate this entire topic so much. It just makes me angry. But what I was going to say is journalists were upset with Gabby's mother for giving information to a YouTuber and not them. And all I did was factually accurately report everything that I researched and was told. And they kept asking for like exclusive interviews and, media rights and things like that. And I'm like, the level of like, they're just vultures. Like,
yep,
it's disgusting.
Do you guys follow House and Habit at all?
No.
She does this kind of stuff. She basically goes in and independent journalism's everything. She started with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, and she went to it, and she just like does this kind of stuff. And I want to say she followed the Gabby one too. And she gets so much flack for it, so much hate. Like media companies go after her, and she's like, I'm just reporting what you guys won't. And she's not a conservative either, but she's just seeing like the bias in the media. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to tell the truth. And she gets crap for it. She's on Instagram. I'd follow her because she's really,
it's insane.
She stays on top of stuff. Yep. It's aggravating.
People. They are not good people.
Another thing I want to bring up is, I can't remember who said it. The last name was Rojas. And
Gabriel Rojas.
They gave the testimony where they said that 85,000 kids had been disappeared off of the border. And this was in like April, I think.
Whoa,
and it was there for like a day, and then nobody reported on it, nobody cared, and then we just moved on from it. 85,000.
Somebody commented on the video telling me that only 100 kids are go missing each year in the U.S.
That's so
and
much better.
I'm like, okay, first of all, the number that are even just reported missing is 460,000. So I'm having a hard time believing that in a country of 350 million people, where 460,000 kids a year are reported missing, only 100 of them are actually permanently missing, especially given how many of these I've looked at myself.
Yeah, 2 days before I saw the movie, I opened Twitter and I saw, you guys may or may not have heard about this, but in like Alabama or Arkansas, there was a baby that was napping in the back of a car. So the dad figured, I'm just going in quickly, coming right back out into a friend's house. While he was in there for the 2 minutes, the baby got taken. So it's like, they can't tell me that this stuff doesn't happen, where 2 days before I open my phone and see that article. And it was a 9-month-old baby too. So
we put out a video yesterday on the case of a young woman named Amber Tuccaro who went missing from Edmonton, Canada in 2010. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, their investigation did not exist. For 2 years, they claimed they just had no leads and they were getting tips and following up and everything. They never, in the most politically correct terms possible, the report on their behavior says they didn't investigate. And it just tries to like fuzzy legalese that away. But so, the RCMP, well, that's their FBI. So you want to tell me that our FBI is any better? I don't believe that.
It's crazy.
There's another deal where the Department of Justice website was changed in, 2021 or 2020? Something like that. there's a lady on Timcast that was talking about this, and she's from War Room, I think.
Oh yeah, I think that was the other night.
But yeah, it was talking about like the definition of like sex trafficking as it pertains to open borders, that sort of thing, and they just changed the language in it, basically to put a positive spin on open borders or something like that.
Gross.
But yeah, that could be another reason that people are running cover for this.
Well, what really makes me mad about that is the bill that they mentioned in the movie that was set up in 2019, they repealed in 2020. And I was sharing it yesterday because I was looking into it. And it seems like what it was is what AOC was crying in the parking lot over. Oh, they're separating the children from the families, where what they were doing is they were taking the kids, separating them from the adults, making sure they belonged to those adults. Because even if it's not sex trafficking, they'll use them to get across the border for drugs. And then they'll leave them in the desert. They'll leave babies in the desert. They'll find 2-year-olds in the desert. And they're making sure those kids belong with the right people, because if they don't, those kids are going to be sexually abused or they're going to die in the elements. And I'm just like, I can't even believe that was rescinded. It just makes me so angry.
So many people just have a normalcy bias that they don't want to believe this is possible, that this is happening. So they just reject it, and they take anything that's going to confirm their preconceived notions as fact. And it drives me nuts because I talk to people about it, and like I made a joke about the movie last night because my friends want to go see Barbie and then Oppenheimer because they're psychopaths.
What?
And I was like, oh, well, how about we see Barbie first and then Oppenheimer and then like chain smoke a pack of cigarettes and go see Sound of Freedom. And, that'll really top off the night. We'll all be in a great mood. And the girl behind me at another
You will
table
not be in a
goes,
great mood
"You
after
see
seeing
Sound of Freedom. Like, QAnon movie." And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
I'm like, a random person just doesn't even know what the hell they're talking about. And
You're
there's
like,
nothing you can
do you have 20 minutes for me to rant to you?
They don't care. They don't
That's
want
crazy.
to believe. They want to believe that it's all just right-wing propaganda, because then they don't have to believe that it's real.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's so sad.
My opinion on where I stand with police changes kind of day to day, depending on my mood, But thank God for, border agents and border patrol, because I've, just like you, Bray, I've seen several articles on, where it mentions kids as young as 2-year-olds being left out for dead in the desert. And I cannot, my boy is nearly 2 years old, right? And I cannot imagine the kind of human that would leave a 2-year-old out in the elements.
Yep.
It's just in the circles that all three of us run in, and just because of what we do, I think we are.
Oh no! Did we lose him?
We lost him. Oh,
but
no,
even with that,
he's back.
Oh,
you
there you
froze
go.
for a moment.
But even with that, I still cannot comprehend the type of person that it takes to either do these crimes or even just leave someone in the desert that's that young. I can't get over that, or can't get past that. Yep. You know what I mean?
I think there's a reason.
Always bothered me.
There's a reason a lot of people, and obviously this gets into the religious stuff, but a lot of people have been calling the whole thing spiritual warfare. It's because, call it spiritual warfare, call it, sociopathy, whatever you want to do. There are these people who are out there who really just are so devoid of any character whatsoever that they will do the worst things in the world just to benefit themselves. And it's that level of moral depravity doesn't come from nothing. There's some sort of evil thing going on in the world that is causing that. And that's not to be like a conspiracy. I'm not saying like there's a group behind it. Just like something is wrong, that this is actually a problem. Like this should not be something that happens. So what is going on there?
If you want to see the real depravity of humanity, just open Reddit for 2 seconds.
Oh God.
Basically. Like all of the weird, like the child stuff, the like abortion porn on there, where it's like women being like, I love the feeling of having an abortion, like things like that, where they get off on it. And it's like, how are humans this depraved? I mean, I know why, but it's just mind blowing to me that we've really sunk this far in society. Also, I don't have 6 fingers. It's the clipping.
Hey, that's an AI Nephilim thing. One of the things that I heard Jim Caviezel say in an interview with Sean Ryan, that's a very good interview if you want to listen to that. It's in you can do it on Spotify too. So if you just like listening to him, that's kind of what I do. But yeah, Jim Caviezel with Sean Ryan. And one of the things that he says in that is my weapon is acting. And he asks the audience, what is your weapon? And I think for us, that's this, right?
Yep.
It's podcast, it's TikTok, it's whatever. It's getting the message out and continuing to put a fire under people's asses about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he says something along those lines in the special message that plays after the credits, where he says, like, you know, the storytellers have the power. And that was the line that really resonated with me, because I was like, yeah, that is my job, is I tell stories. So whether this story is, you know, true or not, it's an important story to be told. And there's a true version of it out there. There are people who actually do experience this stuff, even if it's a lot less people than he suggests, even if it's not as successful of a rescue operation as he suggests. There are still people out there who are trying to fight it. There are still people out there who are being victims of it. And instead of fighting over whether or not this movie is accurate, maybe we should be trying to figure out how we can all work together.
Well, we've had this whole conceited effort for the last 3 or 4 years of the government being like, if it only saves one life, if it only saves one life, well, how about you apply that to stuff like this then? What if it only saves one kid? That's still one kid saved.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to shout out a few things real quick. You know, between Jim Caviezel and Tom Ballard on all the interviews that they've been on, I've gathered a few websites. One of Tim Ballard's, I guess, funds, I guess is what you call it. It's called the Nazarene Fund. Another one is Operation Underground Railroad. I think you can probably just Google either one of those and find out. But then so I have 2 websites, and I believe one of them is his, he recently got out of the business, right? So I believe one of them is the business that he was involved in, and then the second one is the business that he is now involved in. And basically, instead of going on these missions, he is funding other people and other organizations that do good work to go on these missions. So one of those websites is spearfund.org, spear like the spear you're throwing. And the second one is ourrescue.org. So if you're looking for ways to get involved, or if you want to give money to support those organizations, that's where you would go.
Nice.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask about is
just also,
Aidan,
just in case it comes up and somebody's like, well, maybe if I don't want to do Tim Ballard, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is also a very good one.
There you go.
Just in case people are like, I can't come to, for some reason, support Tim Ballard. There are other organizations.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Aidan, and I apologize for not remembering the name of the organization, but it's the organization for missing Native American women.
Yeah, missing and murdered Indigenous women. There's a number of them. I actually just put out a YouTube video yesterday on the case of Amber Tuccaro. If you go to that video, I don't have them off the top of my head, but if you go to that video, there are a list of links for places that you can go and get information, donate, help out with the problem. But yeah, that's a really under talked about one that, a lot of people look at the raw numbers with that and they're like, oh, well, that's not a ton of people. That's, a few hundred people per year.
But it's still people.
Also, it's Native American women. There are not that many of them. There are proportionally, this is way off. Also, most violence is intraracial. They experience interracial violence at a rate of 97% of women who are victims of interracial violence. Not 90% of Native American women are victims of interracial violence, but of Native American victims, 97% are victims of interracial violence, which is extraordinarily high. That is obscene. It's ridiculous. And for a long time, there was a problem with jurisdictions. Canada still has not solved their jurisdictional issues. The United States is working on it. There's a presidential task force on it that was founded by Trump and continued under Biden. But like that whole, and that's another thing that I always bring up is like, if there's one thing that everybody should be able to compliment Trump on, it's that trafficking arrests were up 800% under him. Like, that was we need to, I think it is very important that we look at how that shifted over the last 8 years and see if it went down, who was in charge of the decisions that made it go down. Because
what bills were passed and what were rescinded.
Like I'm very much focused in on that. And I'm not saying that it's going to be one side or the other. Just like, I would not be, if it does go down, I would not be shocked to find that there's a nefarious reason for that. But it's another issue that's just basically entirely ignored. But for some reason, nobody's saying that one's not real, which I don't understand. There's nobody saying that it's, a conspiracy. And there's a movie about it called Wind River that is not based on a true story at all. It's totally fictional. It's not exactly how this usually happens. Most of these disappearances are not what happens in that movie, which I won't spoil it, but basically it's that she's with her boyfriend when when things go wrong. Most of it is that women are being picked up along highways while hitchhiking and never seen again. And they're either murdered or they are trafficked. And this is because the justice system doesn't do very much about Native American women. Obviously, children is a bit more of an attention-grabbing topic. But yeah, it's an easier target. The government has a habit of ignoring missing people as much as they can, at least at the large scale level. Groups that are really good about it are like local sheriff's departments, local search and rescue, National Park Service.
And it is very interesting how they pick and choose which ones are, we're going to care about this one, but that one we're going to sweep under the rug because it won't benefit us in any way.
Yeah.
The last little part that I want to talk about is, have you guys seen all of the like TikTok people, like, it's probably made its way to Twitter too, but saying that they've had problems viewing The Sound of Freedom or having problems in the theater, like the air conditioning going out and the staff coming in and telling them they have to, refund their tickets and that sort of thing. Have you heard any of that? Do you think it's clickbait or what?
I've heard some of it. I think this movie is in 3,000 theaters nationwide.
Something like that.
There's a good chance that on any given day, one of those theaters is going to have its AC go out. One of those theaters is going to have a projector break. Like, I think that's a flimsy one. And this is something that I've picked up doing my job, is just that we all have that urge to like draw a pattern, but correlation is very much not causation. And that becomes more and more clear to me the more research I do, that when you look at stuff like this, you got to step back for a second and go, okay, what are the statistical probabilities? And then if they're below what you would expect or around average, Occam's razor. If it's above, okay. Or if there's like multiple abnormalities, but a few AC units going down, not going to convince me of a concerted
in
effort.
Midsummer.
Yeah, like
ours was the complete opposite. And the reason I know ours isn't a conspiracy is when we saw Avengers Infinity War in 2018, we had certain areas in the theater where speakers were only working in the front, and they've just for some reason have not updated it in however many years. So of course this was in one of those theaters. So every time the AC would kick in, my husband was like, I can't hear. I don't know what they're saying. I would have to stop chewing popcorn and just kind of sit there like, okay, like, and waiting for them to turn off so I could listen. So it was the reverse for us. I wish the ACs weren't working, in all honesty. But I think, was it the people behind The Sound of Freedom put out an article saying that the AMC theaters, they were like, no, it's not them. They're not doing anything to sabotage. They've been super supportive. And they were saying, if you see it, go see it in an AMC theater because of how supportive they've been, or something like that, where they defended them and said it wasn't anything on their part. So that's good.
Yeah, I think Aidan brings up a really good point on that. Well, we're coming up on 50 minutes, so we might get out of here a little bit early. Do you guys want to shout out your platforms?
Sure. Bree, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I live on YouTube. I'm still working on how consistent I am with stuff because I've got kids and stuff. So it's when I can. So if you want to hear rants and things, that's on YouTube. I'm on Instagram and I am on Twitter at Fear Me It's Bree. Both I try and keep it the same everywhere, and I kind of put stuff on Rumble, but I'm figuring that one out. So yeah.
I'm Aidan Mattis. I'm the host of a channel called The Lore Lodge. We also have a history channel called The History Hut and a Bible channel called The Weird Bible. But yeah, I do folklore, paranormal, religion, unsolved mysteries, things like that. And you can find me at The Lore Lodge on basically everything or some variant of that, or at the Aidan Mattis on basically everything.
Sweet. So I'm going to say those websites one more time. Spearfund.org and ourrescue.org. So if you feel compelled to get involved or give money, those are the two websites. Another two organizations were Nazarene Fund and Operation Underground Railroad. And my name is Casey. I'm on Twitter as Liberty Denton. Clearly, I'm on YouTube. This is the Speak for Yourself podcast. So if you want to give us a follow and a like, that would be much appreciated. And I guess we're going to get out of here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.